The letter on the sea. The Tsugaru Strait stretched before them under the gray autumn sky, its choppy waters slapping against the hull of the ferry as it cut through the waves from Aomori to Hokkaido. Standing at the stern rail, Lee Junho felt the cold wind bite through his wool coat, but he barely noticed. His attention was entirely focused on the yellowed letter in his hands, paper so fragile from years of handling that he feared it might disintegrate in the salt spray. The letter was written in Japanese, in the delicate, careful handwriting of a woman. At the top, in faded ink, were the words to my son. Junho had read these words countless times since Aunt Boksun had pressed the letter into his dying hands 3 months ago, but each reading felt like the first. His eyes traced the familiar characters as the ferry rolled beneath his feet. Junho, my beloved son, Mama loves you more than life itself. But Mama has become someone who no longer deserves to stand beside you. If you are reading this letter, please do not come looking for me. Think of your mother as someone who died long ago. His hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the weight of 30 years of questions that this letter both answered and deepened. The wind threatened to tear the precious paper from his grasp, and he instinctively pressed it against his chest, protecting it as if it were his mother herself. I have watched you from the shadows all these years. Every success, every triumph, I was there, unseen. That is enough for me. You have grown into a man I am proud to call my son, even if I can never say those words to your face. Junho looked up from the letter, gazing toward the distant horizon where Hokkaido awaited. In his mind, he could see fragments of his strange, charmed life, the anonymous scholarships that had appeared just when his adoptive family needed them most, the business deals that had gone inexplicably smoothly, the doors that had opened as if by magic. He had always wondered about these small miracles. Now he understood. Live your life in the light, my son. Forget the woman who gave birth to you in darkness. But how could he forget? How could he pretend not to know that somewhere in this country, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him was living in exile from her own child? Junho carefully folded the letter and returned it to his jacket pocket, his jaw set with a resolve that had been building for months. I'm coming to find you, mother, he whispered to the wind. No matter what you've become, no matter what you think you deserve. The ferry's horn echoed across the water as the coastline of Hokkaido came into view. Junho remained at the rail, the letter safely tucked away, watching as the land that held his answers grew larger on the horizon. Behind him lay Honshu, where weeks of searching had finally led him to this moment. Ahead lay Hokkaido, and somewhere in its remote reaches, the woman who had loved him enough to disappear from his life. The last journey. The ferry's engines had fallen silent, and the announcement echoed across the deck in crisp Japanese. We have arrived at Hokkaido port. All passengers please prepare for disembarkation. Junho folded the letter one final time, his fingers lingering on the worn paper before tucking it safely back into his jacket pocket. Around him, other passengers were gathering their belongings, chatting about their plans, complaining about the choppy crossing. Normal people living normal lives, unburdened by the weight of 30-year-old secrets. He made his way down to the car deck, where his black Toyota waited among dozens of other vehicles. The practical choice would have been to fly from Tokyo to Sapporo, but something had drawn him to this slower, more deliberate journey. Perhaps it was the need to feel the distance, to understand the vastness of what his mother had crossed when she fled Korea all those years ago. The drive from Hokkaido to Sapporo stretched before him, nearly 4 hours through Hokkaido's vast landscapes. As he guided the car off the ferry and onto Hokkaido's roads, Junho felt the weight of finality settling over him. There would be no more searching after today. Either he would find her, or he would learn to live with questions that had no answers. The early evening sun cast long shadows across the unfamiliar terrain. Hokkaido felt different from Honshu, Wilder, emptier, as if the island itself existed at the edge of the world. It seemed like the perfect place for someone to disappear, to reinvent themselves completely. As the kilometers passed, Junho found himself thinking about the investigation that had brought him here. 3 months of following paper trails, hiring private detectives, bribing clerks for access to immigration records. The breakthrough had come from an unlikely source, a former Yakuza associate who remembered a Korean woman with exceptional business instincts and an iron will. She had eyes like winter, the man had told him. Beautiful but dangerous, smart enough to survive in our world, which is saying something. The man had lost track of her in the early 70s when she'd moved her operations north, but he'd heard rumors. A shipping company in Sapporo, real estate investments, construction contracts, always operating through intermediaries, never showing her face in public. If she's the woman you're looking for, he'd said, she won't be easy to find. And she definitely won't want to be found. Now, as Junho drove through the gathering dusk, he wondered what he would say when he finally stood before her. How do you address a mother who abandoned you? How do you bridge a gap of 30 years? And most importantly, how do you convince someone who has spent decades hiding that it's safe to step into the light? The city lights of Sapporo appeared on the horizon just after 9 o'clock. Unlike the dense urban sprawl of Tokyo or Seoul, Sapporo spread out in orderly grids, its streets wide and planned. Even in the darkness, there was something almost European about its layout, a reminder that Hokkaido had been developed later than the rest of Japan, with more deliberate urban planning. Junho had booked a room at a modest hotel in the Susukino district, the entertainment quarter, where he hoped to begin his search. His contacts had suggested that if Takahashi Sumiko truly controlled business interests in Sapporo, someone in the bars and clubs would know of her, even if they wouldn't admit it readily. As he checked into his hotel, the young clerk behind the desk gave him a curious look. "Business trip, sir?" "You could say that," Junho replied in fluent Japanese, noting how the clerk's expression shifted slightly at his accent. Even after all these years, even with his perfect command of the language, he was still obviously Korean to Japanese ears. He wondered if his mother had faced the same subtle discrimination, if her mixed heritage had been another burden to carry. In his room on the 7th floor, Junho stood at the window looking out over the neon-bright streets of Susukino. Somewhere in this city, perhaps even visible from this very window, was the woman who had given birth to him. The woman who had built a business empire from nothing. The woman who had loved him enough to disappear from his life completely. Tomorrow, he would begin the final phase of his search. Tonight, he would allow himself to hope and to fear what that search might reveal. He pulled out the letter one more time, reading by the light of the hotel lamp the words that had brought him so far from home. "You have grown into a man I am proud to call my son, even if I can never say those words to your face." "We'll see about that, mother," he whispered to the glittering city below. "We'll see."